We always get some funky tunes. Whatever plays before this leads us in. Oh, that sounds good. Welcome to Illini Drive here on 107.1 WPGU. I am Eli Schuster. I'm joined alongside Isaac Trotter and our producer, Tati Perry.
What's up?
Oh, love when Tati says hi. It's going to be a good show when Tati talks without us having to tell her to talk. You know it's going to be a good show.
We'll see.
She actually blossomed. At the beginning, she was really nervous to talk, and now she just says, "What's up?" Right at the beginning, we don't have to lead her at all.
It's great. It's great. Well, again, welcome to Illini Drive. This is our sports talk radio show. This is exciting stuff. However, this week's a little bit different because at the end of the week, we go every Tuesday and Thursday. We're on Monday through Thursday, but this is the Tuesday-Thursday team, and typically we get to talk a little football. And it's a bye week for Illinois. So while we can still talk football, we will talk some Illinois football. It's going to be lighter today. It's going to be a lighter load. How do we feel about that? Yeah, Isaac's said that.
No, I'm kidding, but I think the bye week came at a perfect time for this team, and we can break that down later. But I think they're sitting at a decent spot, 2-2. You get a couple weeks off to get healthy. You get some guys, key guys, KJ Coach, will get back and get going on what you need to do.
Well, we will definitely get into a little bit of Illinois football. It'll be exciting. I kind of want to talk about the top three things that we want to see this team change throughout the season. So I think that's something that we can discuss a little bit later. But I think we could talk a little bit of baseball throughout this show. We're coming down. We're coming down to the wire in the NL Central. So we got the Cubs and Brewers are fighting for their lives right now, and well, not their lives, but they're fighting for their playoff lives. How good is their playoff life going to be? Yeah, they're fighting for status. And the Cardinals are fighting for their life. That's so. The Cardinals. The
Cardinals have fallen off a crater. They have.
We'll talk about last night a little bit. We'll definitely talk about last night. So we'll get it into.
Let's just say you did not want to be in the same apartment with me last night as I watched the St. Louis.
No, and I was in the same apartment, and it was not great. So I will also talk a little bit about volleyball. We've talked about volleyball quite a bit this week, but it's a big weekend for Illinois volleyball, so we'll definitely want to get into that. And we can talk a little NFL later. Why not? Got some NFL going tonight. Got a great game tonight with the Rams and the Vikings. I got Robert Woods, Dalvin Cook going in that game. So I'm going to be...
Stephon Diggs is my guy today. I think he could be poised for a pretty big game. The Rams have a couple cornerbacks out. Aqib Talib was put on IR today. Marcus Peters is also dealing with an injury. So interested to see how a beat-up St. Louis Rams team takes on a Vikings team that got absolutely shellacked by the Bills last weekend, and see what type of comeback game for both of these teams is.
Yeah, we got that Rams content all day. So this is going to be an exciting show. I'm ready to go. And I think the first thing to definitely get into, talk about, the big thing that's most important in Illini athletics for this weekend, Illinois volleyball. Illinois volleyball is having a great season so far. They're still undefeated. This team has not lost. And they have a huge game. They have their Stuff Huff game this weekend. And tickets for that game's sold out. I hear that there's some general admission tickets left, so there's seats that you could buy, and those seats are all sold out. They're all gone. And then for general admission, you can still get some tickets, but that was in the morning yesterday, and they said there was only a couple left. So it's worth go checking out. But that's going to be they play Nebraska, Big Ten foe, and also Nebraska defending national champions last season. And this game every year, this Stuff Huff game, is incredible every single season, and the energy that comes in there, we've talked about several times on this show. Brian Binns, who's usually on this show, he's the Daily Illini volleyball beat reporter. He's expressed how this match every single season is one of the best sports moments that this campus has, and I think it's kind of a hidden sports moment that a lot of people don't realize because people are looking at those big football and basketball games, but this match might have the most energy out of any on this campus.
Absolutely, and I think with Stuff Huff coming up this weekend, the Spike Squad's going to be out and ready to roll. I think
Spike Squad probably the best fan base on this campus.
This is a top 10 showdown too. Let's not take anything away from this game. Illinois, of course, is undefeated. Nebraska is a top 5 program in the country. Two of the perennial powers.
Illinois is almost a top 5. They're right outside.
Yeah, two of the perennial powers in the Big Ten, and this could be a matchup of something we might see down the road in the NCAA tournament, because this Illinois team is as good as it gets, and they're going to be right in the mix to advance to the Sweet 16 Elite 8 again under Coach Chris Thomas, and of course Nebraska trying to repeat as national champions. Very, very interesting early in this Big Ten slate to see how Jordan Poulter, how Ali Bastianelli and the crew are able to fight and compete against a really, really good Cornhusker
Well, there's
team.
some players that this season, and you know, people look at Poulter and they look at Bastianelli to be, they've been consistently the two dominant players on this team. But this season, Jackie Quaid and Beth Prince, two players who have been incredibly good. Beth Prince struggled at the beginning of the season, had a little bit of an injury, and then she came back in, and she's been dominant. And Jackie Quaid gives your team an ability that little player can, because she'll play around the entire court. And she's got to be one of the most versatile players in the Big Ten and possibly the country. So this team's got a lot of really impressive talent, and they're just insanely fun to watch.
And sophomore Morgan O'Brien has had a really heck of a season too. So this Illinois team is loaded.
Well, they're not going to go anywhere. They're also they
Right.
got plenty of young players.
Really good talent. Coach Chris Thomas has done a great job recruiting, had a really good recruiting class last year, and this freshman group has been solid. You don't have to count on them for big-time contributions because you have some veterans there, but they're going to be really good in a while. And that's the thing about Illinois volleyball. It's sustained success. And right at the end of Kevin Hambley's tenure, you saw them slipping off a little bit. Well, Chris Thomas has come right back in, elevated them back up into that Sweet 16. I mean, they're one of the top, 10 to 15 programs volleyball-wise in the country, and I don't think that's an understatement at all. And then that's proving what Hambley and Thomas have done with this program. And honestly, it's proved what this Illinois, program is able to support. And having that support from the Spike Squad and having plenty of people have interest in Illinois volleyball helps them become one of those better premier programs and helps them make that sell and recruiting so much better. Yeah,
Thomas too. This weekend's big for him just because he's playing his former team in the sense that he coached there. That's where Josh Whitman here found him. He was an assistant coach at Nebraska, came here to take over the head coaching duties. So this will be a big weekend for him, kind of having his old stomping ground coming to his new stomping ground. So that'll be pretty fun to keep an eye on. But I'm excited. I think people should be really excited if you can. I think people should go out and definitely try and watch this match and just get in that atmosphere. It's one of the best. And also, I think this is going to be interesting. We're putting together something to go in the Daily Illini in the sports section to have a closer look at the average height on these Big Ten teams. Because it's interesting when you actually look at it, because Illinois is not really near the tallest team in the Big Ten, and there's a lot of height, and I think a lot of people sometimes make the accusations that the taller you are, the better you're going to be, and a lot of times the height is not necessarily what matters, and I think Iowa is one of the tallest teams on average in the Big Ten, and they're not one of the ranked teams, and they're one of the ones that are struggling. So. That'll be something that's interesting. We're going to be trying to get that out next week and probably talk about that a little bit more because I think that's a very interesting
Way
stat.
to plug your stuff there. That's a professional plug.
Always plugging. That's what you got to do. That's what we do here. So definitely try to go check out that match this weekend if you can. We'll talk about it next week on Tuesday. We'll definitely have to get into it a little bit. So that'll be exciting. And Illinois still might be undefeated. If they take down Nebraska, I can guarantee you that rank's moving up.
They're going to be a top 5 team in the country if they beat Nebraska this weekend, and it'd be huge. I mean, when's the last time Illinois has been in the top 5? I want to say it was 3 years ago. Hambley's second to last year here when they made that deep run. They were ranked 2 in the country for a while. I think they had a couple weeks where they were number 1 as well, but it's not been recent. I mean, it's kind of recent, but it hasn't really happened in the last year or two.
Well, it's always exciting when you can have a number 1 team at your school, and they're right there.
And it would send a message to the rest of the Big Ten that the Big Ten's elite is if you want to win the conference, you're gonna have to come through Champaign, and people coming into Huff Hall. It's a pretty intense atmosphere. It's a little intimidating.
I like talking to the players about it.
No air conditioning. It gets hot in there.
If we're gonna talk about plug and work, right? You mentioned plug and work. Brian Binns, he wrote a very interesting story where. They talked to the players, and this was just a preview for one of their matches that was coming up. But he talked to them about Huff, because Huff Hall, for people that don't know, is a pretty old, and it's an older building on campus. It's where the women's basketball team used to play.
I mean, back in the day, only basketball played there,
yes,
too.
Yes, exactly. But women's basketball played there for a while. They moved to State Farm Center, and volleyball still plays in there, but this place has got old school bleachers. You walk in, there's classrooms in there. You don't even know where to find the the court right away. So, and Jordan Poulter commented on it, and she's like, I love it. I love playing here because I love when opponents show up and they're confused and they're like, we're going to play here? And then they play us and they're like, oh, we're playing here. So it's a very interesting vibe, a lot of fun. Going to an Illinois volleyball game, always recommend it. Always a good time no matter what. All right, let's move on. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure there's no last thoughts. I could talk volleyball for a long time. One of the best teams. So I think let's move on to our Illinois football talk. Now, I said this. I want to try and do a thing here. And Tati, yes, you're going to be involved in this. Tati Perry, football beat reporter, Daily Atlanta. She's there.
She knows her
She's there.
stuff.
She knows her stuff. She's seen every single game so far this year. Been at every
Last year
game.
and
Been at
the
every
year
game. And
before.
this- well, say, yeah, I mean, we all have. But I'm saying you've been to every single one this year. So have I. So has Isaac. The only one that was away, Soldier Field so far. We all got up to that one. But looking at this bye week where we are right now, right, where Illinois is right now, let's think about, and not just looking at Rutgers, which is their next game. They're going to Rutgers. Let's look at the rest of the season, and let's talk about the top 3 things that this Illinois team needs to improve, right? The top 3 things in our minds. that they need to
Individually or
improve.
as a group?
No, as a group.
Okay.
Just what does this team need to improve on? You can pick an individual. If you think that's important enough where this individual needs to improve the most for this team to do well, go for it. But at this point, what we're looking for is the top 3 improvements that need to be made on this Illinois team.
First of all, I'll take the easy one. You got to stop the run. That's the biggest one for the rest of the season. And Big Ten teams are going to run the football. And if Illinois defensive line cannot compete, at the point of attack and cannot be a wall up there and actually stop the run, then Illinois is going to be in for a really long season. Because remember, after last year, we talked about if this offense could take a step forward, you'd expect this defense to continue to take a step forward, and you might be able to squeeze out a few more wins. You're not a 2-10 team; you get to 4-8, maybe 5-7. Well, Illinois offense has definitely taken that stride forward, averaging 11 more points a game. Their yards are up. They're able to run the football this year, which is something they weren't able to do effectively last year. But that defense has taken even a step back from last year, and
100%,
that's not something that we necessarily expected. The defense really needs to be able to stop the run. Penn State gassed you on the ground. They had 3 guys almost 3 guys go over 100 yards rushing. Miles Sanders rushed for 200 yards the week before against USF. USF was able to rack up almost 600 yards of total offense, and they were averaging over 6 yards a carry on the ground. So if Illinois wants to be able to, achieve those goals and get into a position to play for a bowl game or win 5 or 6 games, it starts up front, and it starts with those linebackers stopping the run.
Yeah, I think, too, when you look at it, it's interesting that if we look back at training camp, which Isaac, you and I were both at training camp, people were migrating towards the offense. I think there was this feeling. Well, no, it makes sense, but I think there was just this feeling that, and obviously there were more storylines to go there with that offense, but there was this general feeling even at training camp that we're going to watch the offense because there's way more question marks there. And we know what the defense is doing on the other field. It's probably going to be okay because we trust the secondary. We trust, honestly, this defensive line who
We know what we're
who
gonna
has
get.
who's proved that we 100% shouldn't have trusted anything about that. And I think that just going all the way back to training camp, they tricked us. I think there was some sort of even in our minds, everyone thought, okay, we're pretty confident that they'll take the next step up, that they'll be all right. Maybe they're not going to be great, but they're going to take the step in the right direction. And I think we didn't know that the offense was going to take as many steps forward as they did. And then we saw the defense take a step back. So during that time where I think people weren't keeping their eye on them is when things really started to change. And it's tough to say, pinpoint exactly what it is. For me, it's the defensive line. And I think that's where it all starts, and that's where it always starts on defense. And other than Bobby Roundtree, the pressure that Illinois has got, especially in these last 2 games, right, against USF and against Penn State, 2 quarterbacks, right, or Blake Barnett and Trace McSorley that you need to put pressure on. You just haven't been able to do it.
And yeah, when you talked about training camp, and you're right, the offense was the shiny new toy with Rod Smith. And we've kind of gotten accustomed to what we're going to see from this defense. But there's been a few guys
They
that
were the
have
Buzz Lightyear.
Right. There's a couple guys that have been underwhelming on this defensive side of the ball. Stanley Green has been very underwhelming at safety this year. He's taken really bad routes. He doesn't take good angles. He forced that one fumble against Penn
He looks
State. That was
lost out
huge.
there.
But he has not played like the veteran that he needs to play like. And when Michael Marquez, the sophomore walk-on, is probably your best safety, that kind of shows you where you're at in that
I do
secondary
think some
right now.
credit is due to Marquez, who's
Marquez,
played great.
no doubt.
He's
no
played
doubt.
very well.
No doubt. But Stanley Green's a guy who started for 2 straight years and
Yeah.
had plenty of experience, and he isn't playing like a 2-year starter and a junior at the Big Ten level. Another guy that's underwhelmed has been Isaiah Gay, and he flashed that speed rush off the edge, but that hasn't really shown this year, and he really has struggled in run support, and he's not able to hold up against those big defensive linemen. And a part of that, for me personally, I think a part of that goes back to missing the spring. He was suspended for the spring, and he wasn't able to really be around the team much. He wasn't able to work out with the team. You can work out on your own, but if you're not in that strength and conditioning room for that period of time, it's going to take you a little bit of time to get back to form and get back to what you're doing. So Isaiah Gay and Stanley Green are 2 guys that I expected a lot more out of, and you're going to need them to step up because they have to play. You don't have the depth right now to, tell Isaiah Gay you're not going to play and Owen Carney's going to play 100% of the time. Isaiah Gay is going to be on the field at certain times, and it's time for those 2 guys to step up. But it's not just them. I mean, Delshawn Phillips and Jake Hansen have been good at linebacker, but it's time for them to also take a stride forward against some of these bigger teams. So be interesting to see how this defense evolves. And, I'll be honest, this is a time and place for a different discussion, but is Hardy Nickerson the guy? I have my doubts about that.
That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, at the end of the day, this is a Lovie Smith defense, and Lovie Smith and Hardy Nickerson are both in charge of that. And is it just talent or is it scheme? I think it might be a little bit of both.
I think it's both. I think we've given some praise on this show to finally seeing this defense be a little bit more like a Lovie defense, with their turnovers and really prioritizing those turnovers.
Bending but not breaking.
Really prioritizing getting the ball in their hands. And so we're going to continue when we get back. It looks like one of our key fixes right now is stopping the run. And for me, my number one's defensive line. But we'll keep going when we get back. Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to Illini Drive here on 107.1 WPGU. Welcome back to Illini Drive. Another funky tune going before this.
We got to really step up our pregame intros.
We're going to get one. I mean, we got to get a pregame intro.
All right, real
our
quick.
Pre-show
real
intro.
Quick. If there's a song that pops right in your mind that makes you scream Illini Drive, what would it be as our intro song?
Me singing. I think we should just record me singing a song.
I support that fully.
Yeah. And then no background music either. Just like a cappella, just myself.
Welcome to Illini Drive.
Yeah, just to go. Oh, wow. That was that. I don't know if I can top that.
Stellar.
We need. We talk about we need athletes saying Illini Drive. I'll hit up my boy Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow could just say Illini Drive.
Wait, do you know what we could do? 10 years ago today was Tim Tebow's speech.
Yeah, it was.
That inspired
I watched it earlier today.
That inspired them. That should have been.
And when I say I watched it earlier today, I meant I watched it 6 times earlier today.
Ladies and gentlemen, our host Eli Schuster is a big Tim Tebow guy. I love Tim Tebow. I thought that I was a big Tim Tebow fan. I read all his books. I loved everything about him. Till I met Eli Schuster and realized he had all 7 of his jerseys.
I'm telling you, man. I love him.
He will always go down as one of the best athletes. He might not have been the best, put up the biggest numbers, but he is hands down, hand for hand, pound for pound.
The dude was going to end up. We completely went off on a tangent here, but real quick to finish off this before we get back to our talk. So, finish off this quick Tebow discussion that I'm sure everyone listening to is just rolling their eyes about. He would have been in the MLB this year.
Yes.
100%, because the Mets were terrible, and they needed something. Good. To spark, well, he was doing great. I mean, he
All-star.
He was hitting high 200s each time he moved up, and so
he'll be there soon.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be in AAA next year, and then I think you're going to see him. Especially if the Mets are as bad as they were this year, they're going to need something for fans.
I don't think they're just doing it to sell tickets either. I think they legit think he can play, and I think he's proved them right so far.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's still some tickets, but I'll be ready. I got my Tim Tebow Mets jersey. It's hanging. It's hanging in my closet. I got it. That's not even a joke. It's there.
He wore it for opening day. Like MLB opening day.
MLB opening day. I did wear it. All right. Let's go back to
reality.
Back to reality. The main discussion. Top 3 things. Top 3 things that Illinois football could fix. The first thing, and I think we all, and this is in any particular order, but I think the first thing we talked about and we can all agree upon is on the list is fixing the defensive line. Right? I think that's the biggest thing. I know, Isaac, you said stopping the run, but to even make it more specific,
the defensive line
it's the same thing.
The same thing.
Yeah, I think to be just even more specific, it's to pick on one position. It's fixing the defensive line. So I think that's the first thing. We talked about that at length.
Pretty no-brainer there.
That needs to fix.
I concur.
Yeah, good.
Oh man, if Tati's on this board,
Tati's
then we
on
know
board?
that we got it right.
Yeah, this is the right move. All right, so let's look at number 2. I think number 2, Isaac, you have a number 2 that is definitely worth talking about.
Yeah, I think Lou Dorsey needs to be featured a little bit more in this offense. And you know, at practice this week, we got to talk to Rod Smith, and Rod told us straight up, like, Lou has really not been a part of this team very much, and I don't think we really understood how much that is. If you didn't know, Dorsey was suspended in the spring, missed all of the spring. Well, Rod was hired in January. That was the time that he was installing his offense. So Lou Dorsey didn't get any part of that offense. So then they're gone over the summer, and you get a little bits and pieces of working with him. But once training camp rolled around, Lou Dorsey was going to be suspended for the first 3 games. The media didn't know that. We kind of had an idea.
Yeah, there was a little bit.
But throughout training camp, Dorsey was getting very little reps as Illinois clearly was getting Daniel Barker ready to play tight end, which makes sense. Then once the season rolls around, Dorsey's going through these 3-week suspension, first 3 games. And yes, he was practicing, but he was on the scout team. He was not working with Rod Smith at all. And Rod Smith had some very interesting quotes saying, hey, Lou Dorsey's been in our offense for about 3 weeks. He had 2 weeks in training camp where he was getting a thing, and then he had 1 game week in preparation for Penn State. And he had a ton of missed assignments against Penn State. Missed a couple blocks. Couldn't get open down the field.
I think we were all surprised that we didn't see more of him.
He was running the wrong routes. He did
Yeah.
not know where to be. So when you have that issue, and this bye week comes at an absolute perfect time because he gets 2 weeks to marinate in Rod Smith's offense and understand everything he needs
Rutgers.
to do. Yes, and
yeah.
there are 4 playmakers that the Illinois quarterbacks have: Mike Epstein, Reggie Corbin, Ricky Smalling, and Lou Dorsey. Those are your top 4, no doubt, weapons. And if Dorsey's on the field at 6'6", he runs like a deer. He has soft hands. He's huge, 6'6", 240 now, and can block really well.
That makes him sound so majestic.
He's a matchup nightmare. That he is going to be a big part of this offense moving forward if he can understand the offense. And again, it's not really his fault for not knowing the offense after really only being there 3 weeks. Yes, he made the mistake, but it's only been 3 weeks. He needs these next 2 weeks to get back in it, and that's a big key going forward. Because if you can get some pass game going, that opens up the run game even more.
Yeah, and I think to expand on that, just thinking about it, my number 2 or something that needs to be in this group of 3 for me is just no more drop balls. I mean, I think that's key for this team. And it might not be something that's glaring and you put right away, but when you think about it, from Sam Mays, right, veteran guy who should be catching the football, Ricky Smalling in the last game had some moments where he dropped.
He had bad drop against
last
USF.
2 games he had a couple bad drops, right? Carmani Green just came back, but had a perfect pass from MJ Rivers, right?
Would have gone for
right
60 yards and might have got it in a touchdown.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful throw.
Oh my gosh, that was probably the best throw I've seen from an Illinois quarterback in a while.
Dropped.
Yeah, and then just right through the hands. So the thing is, it of course every receiver is going to have drop balls, but they're coming at big times and they're coming at big moments. And especially if you're Ricky Smalling and you're just going on a slant route, right? You need to catch the football.
Daniel Barker also had a
Daniel
drop.
Barker had a couple drops, yeah.
For a touchdown.
And so the thing is, these drops aren't just coming on, a first down or even whatever the case is. These drops are coming on a 3rd and 3 on the slant route, and it goes through your hands, right? These drops are adding up now, and they're costing the team scores, and they're costing the team touchdowns because Chase McLaughlin might be there to save you, right? When you're anywhere, well, not I think even outside normal field goal range for how he's performing, but he's there to save you right now. But otherwise, in these past couple of games, you had opportunities to get that first down, and the ball went right through your receiver's hands, and that could have led to a touchdown, and that could have led to an even expanded lead on one of these 2 teams. So for me, and also morale-wise, if we're just going to talk about morale on this team, when you drop the football on a 3rd down, and that sets up the 4th down, a 4th and 5, it's 3rd and 5, you caught it, and it went through your hands, it would have been a first down. I mean, that's rough. That's rough for you, but that's also rough for your team. And so I think for me, you just these receivers, they need to make sure that they're catching this football.
Look, if Illinois makes some catches, if Carmani Green makes that really good catch against Penn State, Illinois still doesn't win. But against
Sure,
USF,
but
there
I
were
don't-
multiple
yes.
instances that the drops were the big thing. And I'm not saying Illinois wins if they catch those
No.
balls, but I think that they might have a better chance to. Because you're right, they had a couple bad drops
And the
against
Cremoni
USF.
one wasn't the only one in the Penn State game.
Right, but Justice Williams has had multiple bad drops too, especially one against USF that really hurt you, that'll put you again closer to field goal range. Illinois didn't score on that possession. You know, best case scenario, Illinois goes down and scores a touchdown and puts himself in a position to win that ball game late. But if not, if Justice catches that ball, you're in field goal range, you have a chance to cut it to 3, and then on that last drive, you're not trying to get a touchdown when you're down 25-19.
Yeah, and you were in the range. Chase McLaughlin could have hit it.
You were definitely in a position to be able to tie that game. So I agree that drops are a thing. That I don't know if that's necessarily as high on my thing because it hasn't been, you know, there've been a few, but there haven't been an outstanding much. I think that they're bigger issues.
I think that
but I
there's
still
a
think
glaring,
it's very, very
well,
much
and
of
I said I think
topic.
it's something that you typically people wouldn't throw into the top 3, but for me, I think it leads to so many more things,
Yes.
and it's a domino effect when you're dropping those balls, and I think that when you look at the moments that they're coming in, that's what makes them seem so substantial, and especially in the past 2 games, that's what makes them seem so substantial. So for me, I think that there's big obvious things that you can pick on, but I think fixing something little like this does change a lot for your team, and it changes momentum for your team in a game. And you just can't have those little moments because if you drop one ball, the chances of you dropping another ball, I think gets even a little higher.
Substantially higher, yes.
Exactly.
That's a proven fact.
Yeah. So, you know, if you drop one ball in a game, if Ricky Smalling's going on that route and on that slant route and he doesn't catch that football, right? The next time he's going to be overthinking it when he's running it and he's going to want to catch it and he might miss it again. So I think that it means more than just a surface level thought process to it. And I think it's happened more than we even realize.
My last third thing that I want to have improvement on the rest of the year is coming into that Penn State game, Illinois had given up 7 touchdowns on the season. 5 of them had been for over 25 yards. And then in the Penn State game, they absolutely killed you for big plays over and over again. Illinois defense, 1, they have to stop the run. 2, they need to stop those big plays. And again, it comes down to safety play for me because there have been multiple instances. Michael Marquez late against USF. Stanley Green and Michael Marquez miscommunicating and a long touchdown for Western Illinois. Kent State burnt you deep a couple times because of bad safety play by Delano Ware. Those guys, you have to shore up your safety play because if you're not able to keep those deep balls from happening and from killing you that way, then the Illinois defense is going to be in for a really hard time. Because again, if you're giving up rushing yards like a knife through hot butter or a hot knife through butter, and then you're also giving up those deep plays down the field, that's a recipe for disaster. And this Illinois offense has been good, but you can't expect them to be able to bail out a defense that really has struggled to do anything defensively outside of take the football away.
Yeah. I think for me, just thinking about what the third is, it naturally goes towards the safety position for me as well. I think that's just something that, and you know, you think with the help of Bennett Williams back will change. When he was in there in the Penn State game, we didn't necessarily see anything change. He also got hurt in that game, so he didn't get a bunch of playing time.
In the first quarter.
Yeah. So, but you know, you gotta hope that when he gets back, that position is going to be kind of revamped. But it's definitely a point of concern. However, I'm trying to think of a third that could have to do with the offense. And again, these aren't just improvements. These aren't necessarily.
Well, when we talk to the 3 on the defense, I think we understand which side of the football might need a little more help.
That's exactly right. But I'm trying to think if I had to pick what I want to see on the offense. You know, I guess I had to drop balls, so it comes down to that for me. But I think Tati, you have you're number 1. You agreed with us on this running. What was your number 2?
My number 2 definitely falls in the safeties. I do think that's a big point of we need to figure that out. So yeah, I completely agree on Isaac's number 3 of the safeties, but my number 2. But my number 3 would be more leaning towards the defense again is very quick to get cocky and then mess up, and it seems to be like they make a big play, a pretty decent play,
They're an
or
emotional
something.
Awfully cocky for a defense that's ranked 13th in the Big Ten.
Ooh.
Ooh, hit him.
But yeah, they make a big play. It's really exciting. They're quick to get cocky, and then somebody messes up, and they're very obvious to blame that person, and then that person gets blamed. They're really pouty, and you can see that when they give up, and it's just they need to channel their emotions a little better.
Sure, yeah. I think it comes back. It comes down to they're an emotional team, and that comes with Isaac. You brought this up when we were talking about during the break. It comes with being a young team. I mean, it shows you how young you are when you have those moments. You're not able to kind of bounce back in game, and we've seen improvements on it because we've seen from game to game they kind of can bounce back from a loss. At least that USF one, and they can bounce back during Penn State to have 3 pretty good quarters. But I do agree with you. I think what we see is a situation where, they have, if they get that sack, right, or if they just have a big play, they get a batted down ball, they're fired up, and rightfully so. I mean, they're jumping around, they run to the sideline, jumping around, and they're pumped up.
I think they're happy when they're at their peak. They're that emotion,
Yeah.
totally fine if you maintain it. They never do.
Well, that's the thing. And then what ends up happening is if the next play is a deep ball, right, or let's say Miles Sanders runs for a 44-yard touchdown, then, their heads are down. And
they carry that with them longer than they carry their celebration.
Exactly.
Because their celebration goes into the next play. That's it. Whatever. We're back. When something bad happens, they don't just wipe it off like they claim they do in like post game like interviews and stuff. They don't necessarily. They swear up and down that they're like it's play by play. If this happened, then we're gonna move forward. But it's very clear that you see it on the field that they mess up. Then they're overly cautious and continue to mess up, and it's just a downward spiral.
It's a really great point that you bring up, Tati, and I think sometimes our audience doesn't remember how young this team is. And if you look at this defensive line, you have Bobby Roundtree, you have Isaiah Gaya, Owen Carney, who are 3 sophomores. And
yeah, those boys are all 19 years old.
Look at defensive tackle now. You're going to have Calvin Avery probably be your starting defensive tackle since Jamal Woods and Jamal Milan are still out to go along with junior Tymir Oliver. And then in your secondary, you had Cam Watkins and Stanley Green, who are juniors, who are the most experienced guys out there. But you've had 3 freshmen who've played a ton and a couple sophomores, too. You really have 1 senior on the team. Oh, and it's Delshon Phillips. He's only been here. This is only his 2nd year here from a JUCO program. So, and your other linebackers are sophomores, and Jake Hansen and then Dele Harding. So when you have that issue and you have such young talent here, that's what you get with young talent. That's that type of, it's hard to brush it off and move right along to the next play. That's what you get with young talent. And when you have 1 senior on the defense and you're having, 8 of your 11 starters are underclassmen, that still shows you how young this team is. And they're going up against old guys. They're going up against guys who've been through these wars.
I mean, that's true. But Lovey himself has even said, like, yeah, they're young. And so, yes, for emotion-based, totally fine. Like, I'm emotional. And I'm a year older than them.
Yes.
So, I'm just a year older than them. And I'm like, that's totally fine. Their emotions, whatever. But when it comes back to the play, many fans and many people in general tend to blame it on their young team. But this young team has done great things. And they've
been through a lot.
Yeah,
this young team, these young players have been, to be honest,
Bobby
they've been
Roundtree's not a sophomore anymore if you have 15 career starts.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just go for Roundtree. That goes for
a lot of them.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the biggest excuse. But Lovey himself said in the press conference after after Penn State, he said somebody asked him about the team being young, and he said, yeah, they're a young team, but a young team played those first 3 quarters, so the young team is not an excuse for the 4th. And
good answer.
I think that's a great point to make, and I think, yeah, technically they are young, but they're
at some
also
point you can't. At some point you got to stop relying on that.
Terrible excuse at this point.
Yeah, you got to stop relying on that excuse at some point, and it's just because of how much game time that these guys have gotten. And I think too, when you have these kind of emotions going on the sideline, or things are going rough, and you say you bounce back, but you don't. You need that senior leadership. That's when that really comes in. And so, you look at Delshon Phillips, for example, right? This is a guy who, and he's a quieter guy, but it's a guy who he needs to have those times where he goes over and he keeps everybody's heads in the game. And it's tough when you don't have a lot of that senior leadership. And this defense is built off of young players, but you need to have somebody that's able to vamp these guys up. And I don't know, and we go back to Hardy Nickerson, right? I don't know if he's doing that enough for this team. I don't know if he's instilling that enough in this defense.
Well, and you also had 16 guys leave the program in the offseason. Now, are all 16 of those guys legit Power 5 players? No, absolutely not. But there's 3 of them that left that really hurt. And they all came on the defensive side of the ball, and they're all would have been upperclassmen this year. One, linebacker Trey Watson. He would have helped this team. I get that his numbers looked a lot better than what he really is, but a linebacker like that who's been through the wars would have been a great addition to this team. He's now at Maryland. He was the Defensive Player of the Week last week. 2, Tito Odedingbo is down in Miami, the defensive tackle. He was Illinois' best run stopper last year. And with him not on this team anymore, that's an issue. And then Pat Nelson's another guy who played safety and it would have been a really nice help in the early going without Bennett Williams. When you don't have those 3 guys and you're going to have to dip into more of those freshmen coming up, those Calvin Averys, those Delano Ware, the Sidney Browns, the Jartavius Martin, I think those guys are good pieces in the long future, and I think that they're going to be very, very good for a couple years. But losing 3 veterans like that, it really hurt this defense, and I don't think people talked about it enough during the offseason.
Yeah, I think that it's that definitely is a discussion point, I think, to have and a factor that can go into things, and especially what ties to having some older leadership on the team. But I think the biggest point to get out of this is just that these guys have played a lot of games. These guys have played more games than the average. Well, they're not freshmen anymore, but than the average college player at this point in their career. And so, especially in the Big Ten, in the Big Ten, you have some teams that are older, but also, if we want to look at some of these successful programs, they have young guys come in, and they're able to do what these guys aren't, which is have that bounce back ability in game.
But they supplement. They're supplementing those older guys.
Of course,
which
you
is
learn
a
from
different
those older
ballgame.
guys. Yeah,
Right.
you learn from. That's exactly the point. Is you learn from some of those
Right.
older guys that are on those teams, and so the only thing that you can hope is that these guys, they learn it, right? They learn this by the time that they're the seniors, and so the recruits that are coming in and those freshmen that are coming in, they can instill in them this ability, because right now they had no one to instill it in them. And so they need to, but somebody has to, whether it's the coaching staff, right? Someone's got to do it, so it's not a cycle that continues.
And I don't want this to feel like a shot at people or anything, but when I see people predicting that this team's a bowl team, I just don't agree with that outlook, because I look at some of these sophomores and I say, if Isaiah Gay was at Wisconsin and Iowa and Northwestern right now, he would be a redshirt freshman that wouldn't be playing this year. If Bennett Williams was on Iowa or Wisconsin right now, he would not have been an ESPN Freshman All-American last year. I love Bennett Williams. I think he's a great player. But he would have been in the rotation at safety. He would have not have started into that. Really, the only guys that have played a ton for Illinois last year that played as freshmen for any other program was Bobby Roundtree and maybe Ricky Smalling and maybe Lou Dorsey. That's it. And so when you have that lack of talent and when you have those young guys that you're relying on that are going up against 22 and 23-year-old men, this is the program that you get. That's why you get those inconsistencies both on the field, both mentally, and off the field with having the suspension stuff. That's what you get when you have a lot of young people that you're relying on.
You have a lot of young people too, and you don't have anyone you have coaches, right? But you don't have players.
You have 8 scholarship seniors on this team.
Yeah, but you don't have players that are closer to their age, that they relate to teach them these lessons and instill them in them. And that's what makes this such a challenging part. And when you talk about the bowl game talk, right, I agree with you. I don't think this is a bowl game team. And if they are, I'd love to be proven wrong, right? But I don't think that they are. And I think that people jump on that bandwagon of saying that they can be or they will be because it's just the best football they've seen from the school in a while. But that doesn't matter because this football has been bad, has been real bad. So when you have a little bit better football, don't jump to conclusions and say that they're going to be able to get it.
I'm not going to get super negative here again. I really don't, because let's remember.
There's a lot of positives, and we've talked about those positives at length.
Right. Young people make mistakes, though, and that's what we're going through right now. You're going to have some growing pains with these young guys. They're going to get better. And if they don't, that's on the coaching staff and it's on the player itself. But I do think that they're going to get better. You can see the talent there. You can see Illinois is taking a stride forward. You're just going to still have these growing pains to get through, and eventually you'll get over the hump. We hope. We pray.
Yeah, and I think that at the end of the day, we could talk about that. We don't want to be negative, but I mean, there's a lot of positives. We've talked about it at the show, but at some point, you got to bring all these out and you got to talk about them because they're there and you can't ignore them. I think especially if you're a fan base out there, you can't ignore them, and that's going to be important to remember as the season goes on. So just keep that in mind. But we're going to wrap up this right now, and when we get back, we will talk a little bit about baseball, some NL Central talk. So make sure you stick with us. We'll be right back here on Illini Drive 107.1 WPGU. It's like we had our own little intro.
That was a great intro. Ba, 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 ba.
Yeah, so it's like we had our own little odd intro. That's fine. It's all good. Good job, Tati.
My bad.
You're good. Welcome back to
She
Illini
just wanted
Drive.
to hear the intro to
She
the
likes
song.
the song. What can I say? It's fine. Welcome back to Illini Drive here on 107.1 WPGU. What you've missed, and you've missed it because we're not going to talk about it anymore. But we talked Illinois volleyball at the beginning of the show. Steph Huff this weekend. And that's going to be against Nebraska. That'll be fun. We talked the top 3 things that Illinois needs to fix in their football season to have a successful season. What is a successful season? That's completely up to you.
Well, certain people will say 7-5 and 6-6.
Four.
I, on the other
I will
hand,
say 4.
I'll be so happy. I'll be
realistic.
tickled pink for 4 wins. If they got 5 wins, I would seriously jump off a cliff for joy. They'd be awesome.
Yeah.
It's not a joyous response.
5 wins is great for this team. So, but we won't get into that anymore. What we're going to get into, though, is some NL Central talk, some baseball talk, because it's that time of year. We haven't talked a
Is
lot
this
of
the best
baseball
time
on this
of the
show.
year?
And you want to
Yes.
know why it's great to talk baseball today? Because the other person that's on our show, Brian Binns, is gone. And it's okay. When he's here, he shuts down. Not a big baseball guy. And the reason for that, from Seattle, he's got stuck being a Mariners fan.
Except the Mariners are really good this year, and he
This
still
year they were
couldn't get
good.
behind them.
Yeah, well, he's had trouble. He's had
He's
trouble.
just a big
They've had
basketball
some
guy.
good seasons, but he's a big basketball guy. But I can understand being a Mariners fan can be relatively frustrating. However, I was a Cubs fan all my life, and that was pretty frustrating for majority of those years so far.
But now in the golden era of
Golden
your
age,
life,
golden age.
you get the best part of Cubs baseball.
Oh, love it.
As
Golden
they
age.
qualify for the postseason for the 4th time in a row.
That's the first time in
First
franchise
time in
history.
franchise history,
Yeah.
and you know, last night was a very interesting night, for both the Cardinals and the Cubs, and one went really well, the other did not go so hot.
Yeah, I think it last night it was, well, I wouldn't even say that one even went really well if we're going to look at the Cubs.
One team survived, another team tripped over air and face planted in the
Yeah.
dirt.
So the Cardinals,
Yeah.
for those, everyone I'm assuming knows, but let's just talk about it. The Cardinals had a chance, bottom of the 8th, situation where they could have tied the game. And it could have set them up to potentially take a lead in that inning. But they could have tied the ball game. And it was a errant throw over to first base. And it went down the first base line. And who was on the bases? Garcia,
Adolis
right?
Garcia,
Yep.
the rookie, was on the bases, sprinted around second, headed to third.
And he was
Ball-
put in as a pinch runner.
But
let me
put in for a
remind
pinch
you.
runner for Matt Carpenter, who had walked with 2 outs, who drew a really good walk, actually, off of ridiculous reliever Josh Hader.
Yep.
Rounded third base, tripped over the air, stumbled, fell.
Gets up. He doesn't turn around.
Instead of heading back to third base like I would have done.
Well, we say that now, but
Yes.
it would have been the wise choice. But
Right.
hindsight's 20/20.
And then the Brewers pick up the ball down the right field line. Garcia would have scored easily if he hadn't tripped and fallen. And the Brewers picked it up down the right field line, fired to the plate. The catcher didn't know where Garcia was. He thought that Garcia had already crossed home plate, except Garcia was 15 feet up the third base line.
But and I'm assuming majority of people know that rundown, right? Let's be honest here that yes, winning yesterday's game meant a whole lot to the Cardinals. However, they're not officially out of it, and I think that's important to point out. Yeah, you can sit. Like, I know Cardinal fans sit there and they're like, "Gosh, no, they're out of it." That was it. And it seems
They're
like
not
yeah,
out of it, but
it seems like that was it. But
would've been
if you're
really
looking
nice
at
to
the
have that game.
technical, the technical, what can happen? They're not out of it.
Right.
It's going to be tough. However, could the Cardinals end up in a
Sure.
playing game?
Sure.
They can end up in a playing game.
Yeah, as we speak right now, the Cardinals are 1 game back for that second wild card spot behind the Dodgers. The Dodgers will head to San Francisco with 3 games with the Giants. The Cardinals will head up to Wrigley for 3 games with the Cubs. And here's the situation. The Cardinals have to win 2 out of 3, at least, from the Cubs. And they have to hope that the Dodgers lose the series to the Giants. And then that would force a 1-game playoff on Monday. After that, if the 1-game playoff, whoever wins that would face the loser of the Cubs and the Brewers.
Well, and you know what the Cubs would have, or what the Cardinals would have loved right now is if the the Cubs didn't lose some of those games that they had earlier this week and last week.
Cubs are playing for a lot.
And so what they wanted was to go into Wrigley and say, okay, the Cubs are starting, and nothing against Tommy La Stella or anything like that, but the Cubs are starting Tommy La Stella. They're starting
Victor
Bodie,
Caratini
Victor
is behind the plate.
Yep. Yeah, these guys are they're out there, and they're sitting. Well, Bryant's out right now with the injury again, but they're sitting guys like Rizzo. Maybe
They're
even
sitting
Caratini's
Baez,
at first
the
for a
MVP.
game.
Right.
You can 100% see it. So that's what they wanted, but they're not going to get that. Right now, they're going to go to Wrigley, and they're going to get a Cubs team who knows that they're playing to keep their first place in the division. And tonight's a big game for the Cubs.
Huge
Tonight
game.
they play the Pirates to finish off that series.
John
and
Lester on the bump.
they'll play. Yeah, John Lester's on the bump, and that's probably the ideal situation they want to be in. But you gotta. For the Cubs, this game's huge. Last night they won on a walk-off. A great job by it was. It's pretty funny too. Is that Terrence Gore had some pretty good base running compared, and he's the pinch runner that was put in. A little more experience though. Terrence Gore, a little more experience, but he got himself to third
you just
base.
know how to sink a dagger into my heart. just even harder. Oh, I'm just really in pain. I was in pain last night. I'm still in pain tonight.
Terrence Gore did fine. Got himself over to third, and Almora, good at bat. It was 0-2. He fell down 0-2, but he was able to.
Morris saved the Cubs from that would have been a demoralizing.
Oh
loss
yeah, they would
yesterday.
have lost the first place spot. So.
Cubs are a half game up on the Brewers right now.
Yeah.
So if they win tonight, they'll be a game up on the Brewers with 3 games to play. If they lose tonight, Brewers and Cubs all knotted up at top the Central Division.
Tonight's huge, and for me personally, I think that if you win tonight's game, you should be good.
Yes.
I think that's how it's going to go. You have 3 games left after that. It's going to be tough to lose it and to end up in the wild card spot. So tonight's huge because if you win it, I think you give everyone a pretty comfortable feeling. But it's going to be tough for the Brewers have everything that should be relatively easy. The Cardinals are the ones it's going to be tough for, but the Brewers had to play the Tigers, right? So that's why if you're the Cubs, you can't lose tonight. And because if you lose tonight, the Cardinals are also going to be fighting you hard. And then
the Brewers are hot as heck right now. 18-7
and also
in September.
They can get a sweep easily.
Yes.
Right here. So they could sweep the Tigers easily. Now, would it be a very Brewers thing to lose 2 out of 3? Yeah, it would be a very Brewers thing.
So Brewers.
It would be so Brewers to do. But this is because they're
so close.
They're
and
so
just can't
close,
get it.
and they're waiting. They're almost over the hump, and it would be very Brewers to not get it. However, they clinched the spot, so they'll at least have the wild card. They'll at least have that.
This NL, playoffs is just absolutely going to be crazy because I think
I want playing games.
Right.
I think it would be so fun.
All right. The best case scenario for MLB right now is this: Cardinals go into Wrigley Field, they win 2 out of 3. The Giants take 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. So on Monday, the Cardinals and the Dodgers are playing a 1-game playoff. The Cubs, even though they only won 1 game, say the Brewers slip a little bit.
Yeah.
And say the Brewers slip, and the Cubs end up winning the NL Central, and the Brewers are going to play the winner of the Cardinals and the Dodgers.
For a wild card, yeah.
For the wild card. And then it would be Brewers and, say, the Dodgers, probably. Brewers and Dodgers, whoever wins that plays the Cubs in the NLDS. It would be outstanding to have, back-to-back Game 7s in a row, one on Monday, one on Tuesday.
Yeah.
The pitching would be crazy because you can't your pitching staffs are so depleted now.
Yeah.
It would just be crazy, and MLB would love it.
Now, but I think something that we're leaving out of this conversation that's important is the Colorado Rockies. What I said, they're playing great baseball, and what I said a couple weeks ago was I think if I told you the 4 teams that are going to be in the playoffs, right? If I told you these teams that I see getting the lock, it's going to be the Dodgers, the Rockies, the Cubs, and the Brewers. That was in my mind. And it's not trying me being, even though I have friends that are Cardinal fans and I like to give them a hard time. That's not me even just trying to give people a hard time. That's just what I think. I think this Cardinals team is young. I think that their pitching isn't going to hold up at the end of the season.
They're a plucky team.
Yeah, but I think that this young pitching that they've been relying on and is great and will be great. They just at the end of the season, it's not going to go that way for you. I think it's going to be tough, but and it looks like I think that's still what it's going to end up being. I still think it's going to be Rockies, Dodgers, Brewers, Cubs,
and then the Braves, of course, in the East.
And then the Braves, obviously, yeah. But I think when we're looking at that, I think the Rockies are a great baseball team, and
The
they dipped for a little while.
Right.
But they get so streaky, and they got so many good players.
Their pitching hasn't been good at times, but they've kind of got it together towards the end here, and their lineup is legit. Trevor Story's had a heck of a year. Obviously, Nolan Arenado is probably the best third baseman in the game. He was in that MVP race for a while. DJ LeMahieu's a very good player. Their outfield with Charlie Blackmon and a guy like Carlos Gonzalez that we sometimes forget about. Very, very good team there, and their lineup is very good 1 through 8. So they're dangerous. I think the Dodgers are still the most talented team in the National League. That's like you see all these projections of who the team is to come out of the NL. It's the Dodgers. But the way they've been playing right now, it would not be surprising at all for them to slip out and slip to the wild card spot and lose in that one game playoff. Because think about this. The Dodgers are going to pitch Walker Buehler and Clayton Kershaw, who have been no doubt their top 2 guys this year. They're going to pitch them this weekend, trying to solidify their spot. They wouldn't have them for that wild card game. Ross Stripling's had a pretty good year. He'd probably get the nod in that game, but that's still not having your top 2 starting pitchers for a wild card game is a severe disadvantage to go up against a Brewers team or a Cubs team that would be ready to roll and ready to send an ace out there to pitch.
Yeah, I think that the Dodgers, it would be such a disappointment for their fan base and for
after everything
their organization
they've done. Yes.
That they go out and they get all these guys and
get
they just
Brian
can't
Dozier,
get it done.
Get Manny Machado.
Yeah,
get
I mean,
Kershaw
and this
healthy.
team was already stacked. I mean, this is already a great team, and guys have taken a major step back. I mean, Cody Bellinger's taken a step back.
Yasiel Puig even took a step forward, and you still haven't been able to get this
exactly.
done.
But I think you've also had some guys take a step back, and it's interesting to see what has happened to them.
I love how we talk about the National League, and because it matters to us, and I get it. This is the Cardinals and the Cubs area around here, but
we're not talking AL.
We don't even mess with the AL, and they might have the 4 best teams in baseball right
Sure,
now.
but also I think what's great to talk about is the looking at like the dichotomy in that league and how the American League is so top heavy. But then the reason the NL and to be completely truthful, not coming from an NL bias, is the reason the NL is so much more interesting to talk about is because you have a lot better competition going on.
One of the worst teams in the NL is the Cincinnati Reds, who will end the season as one of the top 5 offenses in all of baseball.
Yeah,
that's how good the NL is.
And the AL is the AL has 4 possible best teams in baseball, but I mean especially if we're looking at record wise, right? But I think especially come October, records don't matter, and I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how this works out where. When you played more consistent, good competition in the NL, right, throughout the season, versus you just had a powerhouse in the AL.
Look at the AL Central. Minnesota, the White Sox, the Tigers, and the Royals were 4 of the worst teams in baseball, and Cleveland got to play those teams 19 times apiece, so that would be 76 times.
Yeah, and I do think the Indians are actually a very good team, and I think they're a great team. And
when
I think
that's
my
sleeper.
Teams
76 times,
but
that's
my sleeper AL team. I think that they're going to be really good, but and they could scare some people. But I think that when you have guys, you have teams like the Red Sox who've just been killing. I don't think a lot of people realize it's going to be tough for the Red Sox to win the World Series. I think that some people think just based off record and looking at things that they're just going to walk away with it. But it's 7% of teams with the best record ever go on to win, and. We did see it with the Cubs. The Cubs went and did it, but it's going to be really tough.
Cardinals had the best record in baseball in 2015 and got bounced in the NLDS by the Cubs. So it's very much up in the air.
Yeah.
This is why postseason baseball is great, and this is the best time of the year. We got postseason baseball starting. College basketball is getting underway. Then we
NBA
have
just started workouts.
is about getting going. Then the NFL is kind of getting into its groove a little bit. I know we didn't get to talk about that, but it's been a great couple weeks here. It's really
our show's
fun.
kicking up. Everything's kicking up.
You better stick with us the next couple weeks.
Yeah, we're gonna have some good content.
Oh, and Illinois basketball recruiting might have some big time recruits next week.
There's plenty going on, so make sure you stick with us. We'll be back next Tuesday to talk more sports, like we always do. So
we like sports.
We do like sports. Thank you for listening. You have been listening to Illini Drive here on 107.1 WPGU.